If God enacts miracles, he would be able to perform work independent of the universe. Like, it doesn't require him to operate within the rules of the universe. God exists, Adam. How you doing? You are currently muted, by the way. You will need to unmute yourself.
Hi, yeah, I enjoyed the discussion you had with KC.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That was a challenging one. I'll give KC credit where credit is due.
Okay. So the question that he asked was on objective morality. Can you really make morality objective if you base it on objective facts?
Yes.
I mean, I would. Yeah. So your position there was yes, was it?
Well, no. The answer is no, because you're picking an objective fact to care about. Right? The question isn't whether or not the objective fact exists. That exists for sure. But you're specifically picking that out of everything else as like the thing to base your morality on, which is subjective.
Right, but how would the question is, can you really make morality objective?
No.
So I'd say that whether or not, the reason why the answer is no is because it's not people that make reality objective. Right, so the objectivity of morality has to come from somewhere else, rather than you picking a fact, right?
Are you making the argument from God?
Yes.
Okay, but I don't believe in God. I don't believe God exists.
Okay, well, if you... to just address the question, right? So if you imagine that God exists, then you could provide a yes answer to the question.
Well, yeah, that's the argument that religious people will make, but I don't find that the concept of God to even be coherent.
Okay, why is it incoherent?
I have a syllogism for it. Do you want to hear it?
Yes, please.
Okay. There are two conclusions that get derived from it. I'll go ahead and get it for you right now. Hold on. From Jack, he says, I would agree with the host on this one. Inferring from a non-natural property seems to entail a level of epistemological bankruptcy in that it doesn't tell you anything about morality. That's correct. Anyway, hold on one second. Let me go ahead and pull up my thing here. Just give me a sec. It's in my... Where is it? Musings. Okay, I'm going to copy it and I'll paste it inside chat so you can follow along with me. But just so you know, there are two conclusions that it derives off of. Do you understand?
Right, so there's two conclusions.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. So for starters, premise one, the law of conservation of mass and energy holds true. Do you agree with that?
Within the universe, yeah.
Yep. Premise two, work is the displacement of energy through the application of force along a displacement. That's the physics definition of work. Basically, you just, you have an object, you put force on it, it transfers that energy. That's basically what it's labeling work as that. Do you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it always involves displacement, but I'll agree.
Okay. Premise three, for energy to be transferred, it must come from somewhere.
Yeah, somewhere physical, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So if God enacts miracles, he would be able to perform work independent of the universe?
Well, I'm not exactly sure. I mean, performing work is by definition physical. So, I mean, the universe is physical, right?
Well, what's a miracle where work is not entailed?
No, it's entailed, yeah, because miracles involve energy, so it's entailed.
Right. Yeah. So then I ask to you, then, if God enacts miracles, he would be able to perform work independent of the universe.
I mean, he could perform a miracle in another universe.
Well, sorry. So the problem that I'm having here is let me ask you this. Has God enacted any miracle in this universe? Has a miracle ever happened in this universe?
I mean, I could say yes.
You could say? I'm asking what you believe.
Well, if you ask me for an example, I'm not sure I'd be able to give an example. But
okay, do you think, like, for example, is Jesus' resurrection, is that a miracle that happened?
Yeah.
Okay. So that physically happened, according to you, yes?
Well, I'm not sure what it would physically consist of.
Well, he was dead, and the entropic processes took place. The neurons stopped firing. It no longer received oxygen and other necessary chemicals to be able to maintain its connective bonds with other portions of the brain, which would then start to degrade. The body would then begin to decay and succumb to entropic processes, as well as other organisms such as fungi and flies that would begin eating away at the decomposing corpse. And then that is somehow reversed.
Okay.
So that's a miracle. And all of that would be work, right? Because you're transferring energy from one displacement or from one thing to another in order to make that happen. So my premise 4 makes sense under your pretenses. If God enacts miracles, he would be able to perform work independent of the universe. Like, it doesn't require him to operate within the rules of the universe, right? Because he made the universe. He doesn't need to operate on the rules of the universe, right?
Right.
Okay.
But I mean, there could be two kinds of conservation. There could be conservation within the universe, and there could just be conservation between God and the universe.
We got to keep going. I'm asking you, do you agree with premise 4?
Yeah.
Okay. So premise 5 is, if God can break the law of conservation of mass and energy, it contradicts the thousands of experiments supporting this law. So every single observation that humans have ever experienced, there has never been a situation where work being done here in the universe has ever broken the law of conservation of mass and energy. Ever. And that's both at a macro and a micro scale. Okay. So the conclusion, this is the first conclusion, therefore it is not reasonable to assume that God could break the law of conservation of mass and energy. Right? Because thousands of experiments have been done. Certainly it's possible that maybe God, once in a blue moon decides to do this, but that's not reasonable to make that assumption. You see what I'm saying?
So it's an inductive argument.
So
you're saying it's probably not the case?
No, because a syllogism is not is not really operating off of like an induction. It is a deductive process. It is an Aristotelian logical process. So no, it's not inductive. But but what I am trying to present to you is that I believe that I can prove God false beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Because obviously that somebody can be so incredulous to the point that it is no longer reasonable. And I'm taking you through my steps, how I can show you that it is not reasonable to assume that God exists.
Well, right. So the first thing is that the first conclusion is actually based on induction, because you're reasoning from a set of observations, right? So you're reaching you're reaching a generalization or a statement about all cases, but it's not reasonable to assume that God would break the law of conservation of mass and energy in any case from a set of limited cases, which is, as you say, the thousands of experiments supporting this law. That's just the definition of an inductive argument.
Okay, fine, fair.
But I mean,
fine.
it's kind of...
I'll own that. So what's the issue?
I mean, yeah, it's not that important a point. I'm just making sure that I understand the conclusion. It's just, you're basing it on induction. This is the first
conclusion, right? Because there's still a place where God can hide. He can go beyond space-time and, through his process of being a first cause mover, have everything set in place in such a way that allow the miracles to occur. That's the way to allow that to happen, but I can also prove that unreasonable.
Okay, is that premise 6?
No. But it continues going on. There's 2 more premises and then the final conclusion, the second conclusion. So premise 6 is if God enacted a first cause before the universe, it implies he existed beyond space-time. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that God exists both within space and time and in a way that's outside space and time.
Well, unfortunately, the mere act of existing within space-time is in fact doing work, because even a single photon touching whatever God is and that it reflecting back out is work. Right? So even the aspect of seeing it, even for but a moment, right, it would effectively be very real work, right? And considering that we've never seen an instance where the conservation of mass and energy has been broken, it's not reasonable to assume within the universe. That's already done. It is not reasonable. So we have to go on to the next one, right? Beyond space-time. So if God enacted a first cause before the universe, it implies he exists beyond space-time. Do you agree with that?
As long as I understand you correctly, I wasn't disagreeing that God does work. I'm saying that, on my view, God contains the universe. So everything that is in the universe is inside God. So God is both beyond space and time, but he also has a level at which he is within which space and time is within God. So it's not that space and time is separate from God.
Okay, does he exist beyond space-time?
Pardon me?
Does he exist beyond space-time?
Yeah, he's eternal, and
okay,
he
so you agree with
space.
Premise 6. So premise 7, attributing purpose to a being beyond space-time is an anthropomorphization, which is you're attributing human characteristics to something that is not human.
Well, I would say that the human characteristics come from God. So I might agree with it, but I might agree with what you mean by it.
To a being beyond space-time?
Yeah, so we get our human nature from God.
Do you agree with premise 7 that attributing purpose to a being beyond space-time is an anthropomorphization? You're attributing human characteristics to something that is not human.
we're attributing purpose to something which is greater than human.
Correct. So,
Yeah. So
but it
everything
exists
human
beyond
comes from it.
space-time, does it not?
Yeah.
Okay. So let me give you an example. I have a rock outside my door, and I got it, and it told me to say hi to you. Is that reasonable?
No.
Okay. Well, let me change up the variables a little bit. What if I, for example, went to Party City and I got like a bag of googly eyes, and I put two googly eyes on the rock, and then I gave it a smiley face with a permanent marker, and I said, Rocky told me to tell you hello. Is that reasonable?
No, but I don't see how it's an analogy to the premise.
Well, because the rock doesn't possess any anthropomorphization. It's just make believe, the anthropomorphization. The one thing that you can, however, attribute some level of an anthropomorphization is that you and the rock are fundamentally linked. You abide by the same physical properties that make the universe to exist. For example, the rock is made of silica, which operates having four-way bonds, and you operate on mostly carbon that also operate on the same four-way bonds. So in that way, you are fundamentally interlinked with the rock in that aspect. However, if I remove the space-time fabric, removing the possibility for silica and carbon to exist, the problem with that is there is no way to assume any even remotely human characteristic to something outside space-time, because it is not reasonable to assume that. The very fact is the rock itself is a hell of a lot more human than whatever is beyond space-time. I promise you that. So the problem is that you're attributing purpose to something that is beyond space-time. And that's not reasonable to make that assumption.
Okay. Well, I just disagree that it's not reasonable. So, the rock is obviously it's just an object. You can see the extent of its existence just by looking at it. You can see its boundaries in space. Whereas when we're talking about human attributes, attributing purpose to things, well, our ability to attribute purposes to things is a metaphysical ability. And God is also metaphysical, so I don't actually see why it's unreasonable. God is a mind.
Because it exists outside space-time, and there is no fabric to have any similarity to that of humans. So I lead you to my conclusion, which is attributing purpose to God is unreasonable, leading to the conclusion that a non-anthropomorphic entity, as in not God, is a more reasonable explanation, right? Because whatever is beyond space-time, it is likely foreign to us. Because in order for us to see, we need photons to travel, to go from point A to point B and bounce off of things for it to be perceptible. If you removed the space-time fabric, the very concept of seeing is now impossible. I would basically show you, imagine if I could transport you to whatever created the universe beyond space-time, and I forced you to look at it. You wouldn't even recognize what you're looking at. It wouldn't make sense. Is it black? Is it white? What could it even be? Can it even make color, or even the absence of color? How do you even attribute? Why does whatever that is care about us? Why would it? It made 7 septillion planets. Does it have different rules based off of like what if there's like the Queeblaps and the Queeblaps better not touch the Gibloos with the Gordips, because if you touch the Gibloos with the Gordips as a Queeblap, well, you're going to get an eternal damnation of hellfire. I'm sorry, plasma. They don't have fire with the Queeblaps. Do you see my problem?
Well, I mean, I disagree with a couple of points. So, I mean, saying that it's a non-anthropomorphic entity, I just wouldn't agree to that, because it's more like the universe exists within God's mind. So if you call God set A, then the universe would be set B, and then human minds would be set C. There'd be a subset of set B. So it's not that the two are entirely separate. It's more like a subsetting of reality, where you go from that which is maximally general, which is God's mind, and then you end up with a restriction of that. That would be the universe and the laws of the universe, and then you get a further restriction of that, and you get human beings. And the other point that you made was about if you would look at whatever created the universe, what would that look like? Well, there has to be an overarching set of governing principles that connects both ourselves and that whatever that creator is, because obviously somehow the reality got from that point to this point, so that can only happen if there is actually a uniform set of principles that gets you from one point to the next. And so kind of like the claim that it'd be sort of unintelligible to us that doesn't make sense, because there has to be a very basic commonality between the two. Otherwise we just wouldn't inhabit the same reality. They would just be completely separate realities, and one would never affect the other. But that's kind of similar to the other point that I was hoping to make. So I just disagree that it would be a non-anthropomorphic entity. Our values, our purposes, and our morality, they obviously they come from somewhere, and whatever that thing is, it must share some degree of our nature with us, and that's what my view is.
Do you think it's possible that the universe is asymptotic?
Does that mean that it's like not connected to something else? I don't know what that means.
The universe had a beginning, but really in reality it can get closer and closer to the beginning but never actually reach it. It's kind of like if you like took the number 1 and divided it by like 0.1, and then you will go to like 0.01, 0.001, but you can't ever actually reach 0.
Yeah. You said the word just in a. Yeah. So I'm just used to hearing the word spoken a different way. So, I mean, in terms of space, I don't believe in infinitesimals. So asymptotic.
What? No, asymptotes exist. They're real.
They're real in mathematics. Yeah.
No, they're real in reality. There are asymptotes that do affect reality.
How do you know that?
What? C, the universal constant.
Yeah. How do you know? Well, that's in the mathematical laws of reality, and that's to do with.
But that is reality, though. That is reality. You asked for an example of an asymptote that exists in real life, and I gave it to you. It's C.
Yeah, but what I mean is like an object, right? So what I'm denying is that space is asymptotic.
How fast something can go, it would be every object in the universe.
You're talking about the relationship between like the velocity of an object and the velocity of light.
What?
I mean, yeah, I acknowledge that is.
Yeah, both of those would be governed by the universal constant.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay.
Are you talking about space when you're asking me? Do I think the universe is?
I brought I brought up the concept of that it is more reasonable to assume that the universe is asymptotic, right? As in, it never actually technically had a beginning. It just gets closer and closer to a 0 point.
Well, no, that's what I deny. But, so when
Why?
you're saying,
why are you anthropomorphizing that which is beyond space-time?
wait a minute, I want to just address what you asked me earlier. So, like, you asked me, do I acknowledge that the universe is asymptotic? When I said is that asymptotes can exist in the laws, in the mathematical laws, and obviously you gave an example that I agree with, which was the relationship between the velocity of an object of matter and the speed of light. So I agree with that. What I'm disagreeing with is the idea that what you're asking me now, like, so that we can't actually reach the not that we can't reach it, but is that like the beginning doesn't exist or something. So the I mean, I agree that our measuring
there is a 0
instruments,
point. Like, we can see that there's a rough 0 point, but the problem is that when you're talking about space-time emerging, it can get closer and closer to that 0 point in time, but it can never actually reach it.
What can get closer to the 0 point in time?
Space-time.
Do you mean our measurements?
Space-time. Not our measurements,
So you're saying
space-time.
space-time-
Space-time literally was that small.
Right. So you're saying space-time can't get to 0.
Yes, it's asymptotic.
Okay, but I mean, I would just regard. I mean, for one thing, there's all these different issues with. But we have pretty good evidence that space is discrete.
As opposed
So
to an
this is also-
anthropomorphic entity?
What do you mean?
As opposed to an anthropomorphic entity, which is perfectly logical to you?
What is opposed to an anthropomorphic entity? I think that God is infinite and eternal.
An
and outside
asymptotic
space.
existence, you said, didn't sound reasonable to you, as opposed to a God did it. That is reasonable to you.
Well, yeah, because there's reasons for the latter, and there's reasons for the former as well. But I'm not talking. I can believe that space is discrete, and also believe that God created the universe.
Okay,
There
I
is no
think attributing a purpose or attributing a mind and that it cares about us is an anthropomorphization of something that is beyond space-time, and space-time is beyond space-time would be entirely foreign to humans, and so it is not logical to assume an anthropomorphization.
Okay, but I answered this earlier. So I said that whatever the universe comes from, it has to share a basic common principle.
Why can't it be non-anthropomorphic, like the asymptotic universe or a first cause mover that doesn't really care about humans at all?
Well, an asymptotic universe would also be connected by some common principle with us.
Nope, not necessary.
But why?
You're asking the universe why? Why don't I ask the rock?
No,
hey, rock,
no.
why? Is it reasonable to ask the rock why?
I'm asking you why would
I'm
there
asking
not be
you.
any?
I'm asking. Is it reasonable to ask the rock why?
You're changing the question, right?
No,
So
no,
I
no,
was
no.
asking-
It's the same question. Is it reasonable to ask the rock why?
I'm asking you to give the reason for your argument.
I am. I'm giving it to you right now. Is it reasonable to ask a rock why?
Right. Let's just say I say no. Right. What
Yeah, no,
what
it
next?
doesn't respond. But you know what's crazy about this question is that you can actually just make it bigger. And in some cultures, you know, you'd be surprised. People say it is reasonable. So let's make the rock bigger. What if it's the mountain? Is it reasonable to ask mountains why?
Not really.
Okay. What about if I asked the Earth, hey, Earth, why? Is that reasonable?
No.
What about the universe? If I ask the universe, why? Is that reasonable?
Well, the universe as a set of objects is not going to reply to you.
That's correct. And let's go ahead and expand it even further. The cosmos, so that which is beyond space-time as well as inside space-time. Is it reasonable to assume? Is it reasonable to ask that why?
Well, the reason might be attributable to that, yeah. I mean, asking it might not respond to you if you ask.
The very fact that I made the rock bigger seemed to you think that it is now reasonable.
Yeah, because it's a fallacy of composition.
Hmm?
Because those are just objects.
Well, but this is the issue. I'm telling you that it's not anthropomorphic. It doesn't possess any human-like qualities whatsoever because it's beyond space-time. It's not reasonable to assume whatever it is beyond space-time, it should that even be possible, be like human. It's not reasonable, right? So we're stuck on that, but you say it is. So asking it why makes no sense to me. It makes a lot of sense to you.
Okay, but like I said before, whatever the universe comes from, it has established the rules by which the universe works, including
That's fine.
human
I can
nature,
attribute
so
a universe coming from. I can attribute universes existing, but I require no anthropomorphization of that which is beyond space-time, nor do I require an anthropomorphization of an asymptotic universe.
Well, I mean, like I said before, so whatever is outside the universe has to be anthropomorphic to a degree because there's a connection between us and whatever created the universe, that we operate by the same principles.
Okay, that doesn't make any sense to me.
Okay, but which part of it doesn't make sense?
You're attributing that it's asymptotic beyond space-time. It's not reasonable to assume that.
No,
it doesn't
even
have the basic mechanisms needed to make molecules. It doesn't even have that.
I don't know why you're mentioning asymptotes. All I'm saying is that molecules, everything that exists in this universe, anthropomorphization, they're all governed by a set of principles, and those principles come from whatever is outside the universe. So
okay, but you're the one that it makes it anthropomorphic. I'm not. I'm attributing it to likely an asymptotic universe, or if there is something beyond space-time, it would be entirely foreign to humans and would likely not be aware nor care about us.
Okay, so
I mean, why can't it just be like a stage that just makes universe? Why is that not possible? Why can't that be a thing?
I'm not sure what you mean by that, but
so it's a stage, right? Because I imagine if it's beyond space-time, there's no temporal reference, and so under that basis, it would just basically be like this frame of no dimension that never changes, and somehow temporally makes universe. Again, that doesn't make any sense either. That's why I'm stuck on the asymptotic system, because at least the asymptotic system, it can get closer and closer to zero but never reach it. I'm still stuck on it, man. I don't think you've defeated my syllogism here. I really don't.
Okay, so you bring up an asymptotic universe as like something to contrast with what I'm saying, but I don't see why it does contrast with what I'm saying. So earlier I agreed
because that would ground all universal laws.
Yeah, so it shares that's an example of what I'm talking about. It shares common principles with us. So that would also give you a reason to anthropomorphize whatever
doesn't care about
universe
us.
Comes from.
Doesn't care about us. Never thought about us. Never is. There's nothing human-like about that.
That's just repeating the claim. Like I just said, our human nature would come from that thing. So it can't be fundamentally disjoined from our human nature because it's come from that point. We don't have anything to our disposal that does not come from that asymptotic beginning that you're coming up with. So there's a principal connection between our anthropomorphization, our human existence, and that thing. There's still that connection. That's what I'm trying to point out.
That didn't make any sense to me.
Okay, but why? I mean, do you acknowledge that there's a sequence
of
events?
You're saying okay, but why? But you're giving whys to that which is beyond space-time. Again, attributing some sort of bizarre consciousness, and it's not conscious. Like, why would I assume that there's something conscious there? That doesn't make any sense. And so you asking that why is equivalent to you asking a rock why. It's not logical to assume such a thing. It possesses no anthropomorphization, yet it at least has the universal laws to work off of. At least the rock does, but that which is beyond space-time does not. We're stuck on that.
Okay, but I mean, if you're agreeing that which is beyond space-time has instituted the laws, then I'm assuming you agree that laws are abstract.
I can easily invoke an asymptotic universe that invokes the laws. Yep, you're not doing the presuppositionalism argument. You've already lost that.
And the asymptotic thing doesn't disagree with what I'm saying.
What?
But that's still connected.
It's explaining the problem of causal chains. The first cause mover argument. I understand the first cause mover argument. We're stuck on that.
Right. So all I'm saying is that wherever the universal principles come from that govern our universe, there has to be something abstract.
Asymptotic universe.
Right? So it has to. Yeah. So the idea of an asymptote, an asymptote has a mathematical definition. Mathematical definitions are abstract, right? So it's an abstraction.
No.
So it comes from a mind, right? Abstractions only come from minds.
They are things that describe how things are in the universe, but it's just a property. But that's beyond the point. I've invoked the existence of universal laws through the asymptotic universe. That's it. I require no anthropomorphization. You, however, do. On that basis, we're already about 10 minutes past when I usually stop streaming. So I'm going to go ahead and let you have the last word, and then we'll leave it at that. Okay? I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I was more interested in the morality thing, but I mean, it was nice talking to you.
It was great. I appreciate these more difficult debates.
Okay, sure. It was nice to meet you.
Yeah, man. Good talk.